Welcome back to Midlife by Design. I'm your host, Lori Lisai, human design teacher and coach for midlife women, helping you shed the shoulds and remember who you came here to be. Today, I was planning on doing the last of the 4 transformations, which is motivation, but I dropped my kiddo off at college this week and have been reading so many mom reflections online and seeing all of the college drop-offs that I felt called to create a short episode to support you all and me in this huge transition, because it really is one of the hallmark transitions of midlife. So today's episode is a dedication to all of the mamas who are leaving part of their hearts in different places around the country, around the world. And whether this is for you mamas who have kiddos going to college, or wherever they happen to be going, whether they're going to trade school or they're moving out of the house or whatever the case may be, if you have a bird flying the nest and you are a bird launcher, then this episode is for you. I have a few things that I'm going to link in the show notes, one of which is my bird launcher journal prompts. So I invite you to check those out, as well as the other links to the various things that I talk about in this episode. And without further ado, let's dive in. Hello, lovelies. Welcome back to Midlife by Design. Let's talk about Momancholy. I was on Threads the other day and I happened upon this woman, Whitney Fleming, who shared some reflections on sending her kids to college. She has 3, if I'm correct. And she was just sharing about moving that last one into school and how she was feeling, and 'tis the season. And I know that I have been feeling these things, and so I wanted to create an episode that would support you and also allow you to feel seen and validated for wherever you happen to be at with this process. Last season, I recorded an episode around this same time with Angie Andrews, and I will link that in the show notes. That's another great episode with the point of view of another mama who has been through this process. So Whitney, I don't know if she coined this phrase originally. I'm assuming she did. But the term Momancholy, I thought was such a lovely term for the way that we are feeling during this phase, during this transition. And it is one of midlife's big transitions. Your kids leaving the nest, whether they're going to college, which, because that's my experience, that's what I'm going to talk about mostly today. But whether they're headed off there, or they're going off to a job, or they're going to a trade school, or they're doing an internship or a gap year or a PG year, whatever the case may be, they're leaving the house. They're not going to be in your home on the regular. And this is a huge shift, even if you still have a kiddo at home, which for me is true. And I will get to that a little bit later. So the idea of Momancholy it's a word that captures the complicated mix of feelings that are happening during this phase. So obviously there's grief, right? It is grief, and let's call it grief because that's what it is. And it's not the same kind of grief that it would be in totally losing someone, right? Because you haven't lost them. It's just that they are moving on to this next phase. So it's this mix of grief while also feeling things like gratitude and joy, and throw in some heartbreak and so much love with all of the sorrow. And it's this real bittersweet state that we experience during this transition. And I want to normalize any of the emotions that you may be feeling because they're truly complex. And I think that that's part of the struggle going through this transition is understanding that there are all kinds of emotions that may come up. Being a parent is just an emotionally complex experience. And now it's like nobody told you when you had kids that you were going to have to let them go. Of course you have to do that. Of course, that's obvious, right? But you don't really think about it because it's that forest through the trees kind of situation where you're so focused on parenting them and loving them and helping them to grow and helping them navigate through all of the different phases that you're not focused on when suddenly they have left. They're not there anymore. And what we realize in this very stark contrast of the lack of their presence is that they are not ours to keep. They're not, and they never have been, our beautiful beings to keep. They are who we were able to raise and spend our lives with up until this point. And now it's time for them to make their own nest. And one of the things that this woman, Whitney, talked about was how her daughter was making her own nest, but she wasn't in it, and how she had supplied the different twigs and leaves and pine needles and all the little pieces perhaps had contributed those to making this nest, but now she was on her own. And this phase, this transition is ultimately the most selfless act that I think we are called upon as mothers to make in setting them free to then become their own people. As messy as that may be, as complicated as it may be, as difficult as it may be, watching them make choices that lead them to a failure, that then lead them to a lesson. Those are all so difficult. And I think that this phase, this transition is truly one of the hallmarks of midlife, and I think the most challenging. It really does take some time getting used to what it feels like. So I am reflecting on dropping off my oldest at school and bringing all of the things up to his room and helping him unpack and put things away, and should this go here, and where would you like this? And that balance of helping unpack and put things away while also letting him create his own space and, feel like, how do I want to put this together? I know for me that was a struggle, and I probably failed because I ended up just putting most of the things away. And I could tell by the end of the day that he was pretty frustrated and totally ready for us to just get the hell out of there. So I think it's us learning how to be a different sort of parent and them learning how to navigate life on their own, and in this case, college on their own. And that's complicated, So I'm also going to link a feelings wheel in the show notes because I think one of the things that can be super helpful for us as we're navigating these big transitions is to check in with our emotions and to name them. And sometimes it's hard to even tell what you're feeling because there are so many feels coming through. And so a feelings wheel can be really helpful. You can look and see like, oh yeah, I think I am feeling that, or I was feeling that. I did feel that when I was at drop off. And I also want you to acknowledge that because of all of these feels, you're gonna feel more exhausted as well. This work of letting go, of dropping them off, of sending them off is emotionally draining. I took a 2.5 hour nap yesterday, and I did not realize how emotionally drained I was feeling. However, you might notice that you feel off. That's the only way you can describe it. So this is why I think using the feelings wheel can be super helpful. So I'm going to talk about some of the emotions that we are probably feeling. I know, speaking from experience, I want to share those emotions and some tips about them. But before that, I want to talk about your emotional solar plexus, of course, in human design. And if you don't know if you have a defined ESP, emotional solar plexus, if you don't know if that's defined or not, go get your chart, www.lorilisai.com. Go to get your chart, plug in your birth details, and look at that triangle on the lower right-hand side of the chart that's facing in toward the middle, and see if it's colored in or not. Are you emotionally defined? If you are, then you're going to be riding some waves during this time. Your specific emotional wave or waves. You may have multiple. And some of those waves may just feel a little wavier. You know, the ocean may feel a little choppier than it usually does. For example, I have the wave of expectations, which is 3041, connects the ESP to the root. And this wave is all to do with expectations. It's basically about not getting your expectations up, not getting your hopes up, else they be dashed, and then your wave just plummets. So this is a great example. I kind of made this assumption that when we did drop off, I would get a big hug from my boy. That's like the best part, and getting a photo in the dorm room and all the things, like that classic kind of drop-off experience. And what ended up happening was actually not that at all, because we had already been there for a couple of hours unpacking, helping him get settled, and we had to go down into town to get some things that we had forgotten. And then he got a text from some of his new friends, some lacrosse players, and they had a plan. They were going to pick him up, and he needed to be back in like 20 minutes. And so all of a sudden, his stress went through the roof. We had to get back to campus. He had to quickly change and was out the door. And yeah, long story short, I didn't get my hug. I barely got a goodbye. It was just like, you guys got to go. So that for me, like crashed, boom, crashed my wave. And I definitely had some tears on the drive out of town. But whatever the case may be, whatever it looks like, I don't think, any perfect goodbye. And I would say the silver lining for me was knowing that he was headed someplace to be with new people that he was excited about, that I was leaving him feeling excited and, of course, a little nervous, but also just hopeful for the future. And so that definitely eases my heart. And I know that that isn't always the case for some of you. Some of you may be dropping your kiddo off across the country, and that kiddo is feeling really anxious and unsure and afraid and not really ready. And what a different kind of struggle and pain. So let's talk about some of the emotions you may be feeling and name them, and also some tips on how do you feel through them. So of course, sadness may be one of the things that you're feeling. And I would just say, cry, 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 cry for everything that was, cry for the things that are yet to come, cry for the big hug that you didn't get. Whatever it is, the sadness about coming home to potentially an empty house, if this is your last or your only who's leaving the nest, or seeing an empty bedroom, or whatever the case may be, make space for those tears. and make space for them to come at unexpected times. Maybe you're driving to work and a song comes on and it was the song that you used to bounce him to sleep to at night. Any of those things can pop up at any time. Remember that grief is not linear. You may be feeling afraid, like you can't really protect them anymore. There's this feeling of uncertainty when they are no longer under your roof. So there may be a bit of fear. You could also be really joyful because how fucking exciting for them to be starting a brand new chapter in a whole new place with new people and new things to learn and so much growth ahead and fun and yes, parties. We remember college. It was a good fucking time. Joyfulness is completely appropriate and sharing in that with your kiddo. Loneliness, especially, of course, if this is your only or your last kiddo that you're sending out. And I would say, even if you have another kiddo still at home, this one being out of the house leaves an emptiness. There's this lack of, there's the empty room, the empty bed, the empty space, and whatever energy they bring to the household is no longer there. So there is this feeling of loneliness and potential like recalibration time that you need. So just recognizing that, naming it like, and then looking at it as opportunity, as a blank slate for then you're taking your new steps to create this new version of you. Because just as these kiddos are headed off, launching off into their new life, so are you. So are you. Speaking of, I don't know about you, but I was definitely feeling some envy when we dropped my kiddo off because I went to a much smaller school in state, and just going someplace out of state, a school that is so beautiful, like the campus is beautiful, the fields are beautiful, dorm rooms, he was in some of the older dorm rooms, so those were kind of classic, but the buildings themselves are beautiful, and it just made me feel like, damn, I want to go back to college, like how fun. And I think that the key here is understanding that part of that is our own nostalgia. And also, again, going back to that idea of possibility, like there are plenty of things that are possible for us. Like anything is possible for us in this new phase of life. So if you want to go back to school for something, why not? Why not? Some of the other things you might be feeling are anxiety, that out of control piece. I think for me, I have gate 21. It's even in my incarnation cross. Gate 21 is about control. And my kiddo being far away makes me feel more out of control. It also just tests me and my faith in the universe to just be like, okay, all is well, all is good. He's going to be fine. He's going to make his own way. Another way you might be feeling is conflicted, because on the one hand, you may be thinking, should I be feeling sad when they're off on this exciting new adventure and new chapter, and I should be excited for them, but actually I'm really fucking sad because I miss them. I just miss them. And also, who the hell am I now? I have been a mom, and this has been such a huge part of my identity. So what is my job now? What do I do with this, quote, extra time? What do I do with myself? And it's a bit of an existential crisis if you're not working through this and really naming these feelings and feeling into them. And I want to end on, and this is by no means a full list of the things that you may be feeling. Like I said, check out the feelings wheel, but I want to end with hopefulness, because just as this is a new phase of life for your kiddo, it's also a new phase of life for you. So I encourage you to take a moment each day, journal, or just quietly name how you're feeling and give your attention to it and let it feel through. It takes 90 seconds to fully feel through an emotion, and then you can let it go. But if you don't give it that 90 seconds, then it's going to keep coming back and asking you to feel it again and again and again. So feel through it, name it, which is going to help validate it and process it. And I want to remind you, and this is a reminder for me too, for the kiddos that are still at home, what a special however many years you have left with these kiddos. I encourage you to be so present with them while also riding the balance of not being overbearing because you miss your other kiddo. I know my kiddo has been giving me the side eye like, Mom, what are you doing? Why are you loving up on me so much? And I think him being the only one in the house now, it's like, yeah, you get all my attention. He doesn't necessarily want that. So I need to cool my jets a little bit. But one of the things I often think about is where I had 2 years with my oldest son at the beginning of his life, right? And I was alone with him until his younger brother came along. And now he has left, and I've got this 2 years to spend with my youngest kiddo when he's older. You know, he's in those teenage years, and it's just so different. But it's a cool way of looking at it, I think, to see the difference and how many years you have with your kids and when they actually fall. So he will eventually be leaving the nest as well. But hey, I still have 2 years with him. And if you're in the same boat, then I hope that you are using that time to grieve, name the feelings that you're having about your oldest leaving, while also being present and loving up on the kiddos who are still at home. So a few tips for strategies in the coming days and weeks. First of all, self-care, so important in the coming days and weeks. So thinking about what brings you joy, what makes you feel good. How do you schedule that into your day? How do you intentionally make time for it? Because let's face it, you could just go to work and work 80 hours a week and pretend that you're not feeling anything at all, but that's not going to be healthy for anyone. So make time for a morning coffee on the porch. Make time for a run or a walk with your friends. Make time for journaling or meditation. Stretching, movement. Movement is so important to work through these emotions. Somatic, like working with your body, is key to moving emotions and processing them. Another thing that I would suggest is creating some kind of connection, ritual, or established way to connect with your kiddo. Talk to them. You know, you don't want to overwhelm them, but at the same time, you do want to hear from them. You do want to check in. So does that mean daily check-ins at first? Does it mean once a week? One of the pro tips that Whitney shared, which I really liked, was if you haven't heard from your kid in a while, send a photo of your pet if you have pets at home, and that will guarantee that they'll at least give you a heart, which is a sign of life, maybe even start a conversation, which is great. One of the things that I like to do is send funny videos or reels from social media or other photos, just to either get the conversation started or just like a way to connect, this reminded me of you kind of thing. And then another tip is about coming back to what does this phase of life look like for you? So what are the hobbies? What are the things that you used to love to do before you even thought about having kids? What are those things? What has been on the shelf gathering dust for over a decade? What are those things? And pull them off the shelf, dust them off, and see, do these things still spark joy? Am I still interested? Do I still feel drawn to doing these things? Now that you have a little bit more time, this is where you get to redefine yourself, which is what we talk about all the time on this podcast. So I'm also going to tell you to use your human design to guide yourself into coming back to who you truly are at your core essence, because yes, you're a mama. However, that's the only part of you. That's not the only thing about you, right? There are so many more shades of color to your being. And so using human design to come back to, oh, okay, actually, I have a defined route. I should be moving every single day. I think I'm going to start running again, for example. And then I would also suggest checking out your kids' charts and see how can you support them from afar. So if you are putting together a care package or something, for example, and you have a generator, send them something that is going to bring them joy. Send your manifesting generator some snacks that are going to sustain their energy and help them have food while they're on the go. If you have a projector, send them a nice cozy blanket or a beautiful pillow or something that feels so supportive. If you have a reflector, send them some meditations or something that they can listen to on a walk outside. If you have a manifester, send them a link to an empowering podcast or take some things off of their plate, like a gift card or something like that, where they could do some online shopping and get what they wanted. So just a couple of quick ideas of things if you're wanting to send your kiddos something by type. And then the last thing that I would say for you in terms of supporting yourself in this transition is, of course, tapping into community and reaching out to other moms who are in this phase, just checking in with them, sharing the term Momancholy as a conversation starter, and recognizing, naming, and holding space for one another. So that is what I have for you today, a short episode to address this huge, huge transition in midlife. And of course, I invite you, if you need additional support or are desiring additional support, to reach out to me for one-to-one. The fall is a great time to dive into some one-to-one coaching. And after going through a big transition like this and redefining who you are, I can think of no better time, honestly. So thank you so much for listening today. We will get back to the 4 transformations on the next pod. And until next time, lovies. I hope this episode supported you, mamas who have a piece of their heart missing right now. And I hope that it also gave you not only guidance, but some inspiration for what is to come next. Because this new phase that you are either fully in if you have no kids left in the house, or are making your way into if you're still raising some, is all about you. And I would love to support you in a one-to-one situation. So if you are interested in that, please reach out to me. You can either email me or book a call and we can have a chat. And Otherwise, I am wishing you the strength to let go of what no longer serves you, joy to fill your days, and the clarity to be who you came here to be.